Welcome to the History on Screen channel. Be sure to subscribe and like so you don't miss out on more videos like this one. Iranian women filled the streets of Tehran in 1979 to protest the mandatory use of the hijab imposed soon after the Islamic Revolution. The massive demonstration symbolizes female resistance to radical legal changes that deeply altered civil rights and social life in Iran. The test pilot successfully ejected just moments before the aircraft hit the ground in 1962. The fighter jet in free fall shows the high risks involved in the development of military aviation. The operator's survival prevented an even worse outcome during what was supposed to be a routine exercise. Actress Veronica Lake poses with her signature peak, a boo hairstyle during the 1940s, establishing herself as an icon of beauty and sophistication in film noir. The dramatic use of light and shadow in the photograph highlights the glamorous Hollywood look that influenced fashion and women's behavior around the world. An unknown Swedish photographer captured everyday street life in Francoist Spain, recording the social tension and austerity of that political regime. The work offers a documentary look at life under Francisco Franco's dictatorship, where simple gestures revealed complex layers of control and resistance. The Selective Service uses a lottery globe in Washington, District of Columbia in 1969 to determine the order of call-ups for the Vietnam War. Each capsule contains one day of the year, setting the order of recruits according to birth date and creating nationwide tension about the course of the conflict. Allied soldiers recover the painting in the conservatory by French impressionist Edouard Manet from a salt mine in Germany on April 25, 1945. The rescue of the artwork, hidden by the German government during the conflict, marks a crucial effort to preserve Europe's artistic and cultural heritage at the end of the war. Union and Confederate veterans shake hands during the 50th anniversary of the Battle of Gettysburg in 1913. The meeting in Pennsylvania symbolized national reconciliation decades after the end of the American Civil War. The event brought together thousands of former fighters in a gesture of historic unity. Workers labor on the Ford Model T assembly line in the 1920s, helping establish the mass production system that revolutionized global industry. The introduction of the moving assembly line drastically reduced production time and costs, allowing the automobile to become affordable for the middle class. Allied soldiers hold up an inflatable tank in England in 1945 as part of a military intelligence strategy meant to deceive German forces. The use of visual decoys was vital in preparation for the Normandy landings, simulating a fake fighting force to distract the enemy. A little girl holds a chicken in her lap in an urban home around 1900, showing the persistence of rural habits amid growing cities. The contrast between the child's fragility and the animal highlights working-class living conditions at the start of the century, when raising animals at home helped support the family. A crowd of pedestrians shows the widespread use of hats on the streets of New York in 1939, revealing the formal dress standard of the pre-war era. The aerial view captures the visual uniformity of the urban population and the transition into modernity in one of the most dynamic cities in the Western world. Leaning over a monumental model in 1982, supervisor Douglas Trumbull adjusts the visual details of the film Blade Runner. The use of scale models and practical lighting shows the complexity of pre-digital effects, establishing a futuristic look that redefined the science fiction genre. During the Bangladesh War of Independence in 1971, Pakistani soldiers carried out inspections of civilians for religious identification. The conflict caused large-scale population displacement and deepened tensions between communities. The record points to documented abuses and humanitarian consequences in the region. Sitting on the floor in 1946, Mahatma Gandhi reads papers beside his spinning wheel, the charkha, which became a symbol of nonviolent resistance in India. The use of the tool represented economic self-sufficiency against British colonial rule, joining spiritual practice to the movement for independence. The arrival of an Italian immigrant family at Ellis Island in 1905 reflects the peak of European migration to the United States. Carrying basic belongings and identification papers, these groups were looking for new economic opportunities while facing strict inspection procedures before entering the country. Bedouin culture in Saudi Arabia in 1948 reveals the persistence of nomadic traditions during a time of deep political change in the region. The use of the veil and practical clothing shows a centuries-old adaptation to the desert climate, protecting family lineage in a daily life shaped by migration. Sitting with a stern expression after being taken into custody by the United States Army in 1945, Paula, the German leader's sister, waits to be questioned about her family ties. The younger sister of the German leader lived in relative obscurity during the conflict, becoming a person of interest to Allied investigators in the final months of the war. The Twin Towers of the World Trade Center appear under construction in 1970, transforming the skyline of Lower Manhattan in New York. The project used innovative structural engineering methods to reach unprecedented heights, creating a new financial center that redefined urban design around the world. Practicing movements at a ballet bar in 1976, Arnold Schwarzenegger takes ballet classes to improve his fluidity and body expression. The technique was used by the bodybuilder to refine his posing in competitions, blending the delicacy of dance with the raw strength of elite training. The construction of the Hindenburg airship in Friedrichshafen in 1935 represented the peak of German aeronautical engineering in the period between the wars. The aircraft's monumental scale symbolized ambitions for transatlantic connection, using advanced technology that would later be challenged by safety limits and geopolitics. Salvador Dali walks through the streets of Paris with a pet anteater after leaving the subway in 1969. The leading surrealist often used unusual public appearances to blur the line between art and everyday life. The presence of a wild animal in the middle of the city strengthened his mystical and extravagant image. Robin Williams appears as a mime in Central Park in 1974, long before reaching global fame in film and comedy. The image captures the still unknown artist in a street performance, showing the cultural energy of New York in the 1970s and the artistic development of figures who would later shape pop culture. Halle Berry's rise in the 1990s marked an important turning point for black actresses in Hollywood. After making her film debut in 1991, she established herself in big-budget productions. The style of the era reflects the glamour and sophistication that defined her career in the decades that followed. Robert Wadlow, recognized as the tallest man in history, poses beside his father in the mid-1930s. Reaching 8 feet 11 inches because of an enlarged pituitary gland, his height far surpassed the human average. His medical condition turned his life into a constant subject of medical study. The dry riverbed of Niagara Falls was revealed in 1969 when the United States Army redirected the river's flow toward the Canadian side. The engineering operation was meant to study rock erosion and remove debris gathered at the base of the falls, temporarily changing the natural border landscape. The gathering of young American television stars celebrated Justine Bateman's 17th birthday in 1983. The group included names like Michael J. Fox and Sarah Jessica Parker, who helped define youth pop culture in that decade. This casual moment captured the rise of a new generation of talent in Hollywood. Albert Einstein visited Lincoln University to speak to black students after learning that the institution had been a pioneer in offering higher education to them. The German physicist used his influence to criticize racism as a serious social problem in the United States. That support strengthened the fight for civil rights through academic education. Canadian actor Jim Carrey was already showing his natural expressiveness as a child in Newmarket. At Christmas in 1967, the family celebration revealed the charisma that would define his future career in film. The home setting, with typical decorations, shows the simplicity of the Canadian middle class in that decade. Balanced on one hand by his father, a baby takes part in a strength demonstration at the original Muscle Beach in 1949. The site in California was the center of physical culture and outdoor acrobatics, drawing crowds in search of the ideal of health and vigor in post-war America. The National Space Invaders tournament, organized by Atari, brought together thousands of competitors trying to achieve the highest score. Focused young players operate consoles in front of tube televisions while the crowd watches the technical contest. The competition laid the foundation for future electronic sports. Charlie Rouse represents the transition in British public safety before the creation of the Metropolitan Police in 1829. As one of the last night watchmen in London, his story links city surveillance to the military experience of veterans of the Battle of Waterloo in 1815. The Air Force Sikorsky R-5 helicopter demonstrates its carrying capacity by transporting 17 people in a test carried out in Bridgeport on January 10, 1946. The event marked a crucial technological step in post-war aeronautical engineering, setting new limits for air rescue and military operations. Niagara Falls appears completely frozen in 1885, turning the natural landscape into a huge wall of ice and snow. The extreme weather event drew many visitors who risked walking over the solid waters, marking one of the harshest and most memorable winters in that region. A passenger boards a Lufthansa Fokker-Grulich FII with help from an attendant in 1926. The fragile state of air operations at the time required strict safety rules, such as not opening doors before the engines were fully shut down, defining the early days of luxury commercial air travel. Riding a domesticated moose, a man crosses the center of a snow-covered town in 1910. The unusual scene shows the taming of wild animals for transportation and display in rural areas, reflecting human adaptation to the natural resources available on the American frontier at the start of the century. Balancing on a steel wire at the Brockton Fair, Gertrude Dewar demonstrates the technical precision required in entertainment acts in Massachusetts. Known professionally as Mademoiselle Omega, she was part of the popular show circuit that attracted crowds in 1908. Surrounded by young admirers in Germany, singer Elvis Presley signs autographs during his time in military service in 1959. The casual meeting on a public street shows the artist's global popularity, and even in uniform, he kept his status as a youth idol and shaped entertainment culture worldwide. Liza Minnelli going to Studio 54 in the 1970s symbolizes the height of the disco era in New York. The club became a center of social freedom and cultural avant-garde, attracting celebrities looking for refuge in a world of excess and diversity, shaping entertainment in that decade. Alfred Hitchcock enjoys a sled ride in the snow with his grandchildren in 1960, showing a relaxed and personal side of the master of suspense. The image captures the filmmaker in a rare family moment during the height of his Hollywood career, revealing the human side behind the cameras and worldwide fame. Queen Mary holds the future Queen Elizabeth II in her lap in a 1926 image that symbolizes the continuity of the British monarchy. The portrait of the grandmother with her newborn granddaughter captures an intimate royal moment in the period between the wars, securing the dynastic succession of the House of Windsor. Leaning on a cane and helped by an aide in 1943, President Franklin Roosevelt takes part in an official diplomatic meeting. Beside him, the presence of Madame Chiang Kai-shek and Eleanor Roosevelt reinforces the importance of the international political alliances formed during World War II. Soldiers of Napoleon Bonaparte's Grande Armée pose for a series of daguerreotypes decades after the Napoleonic Wars. Wearing original uniforms with decorations and feathered shakos, these veterans represent the last living link to the campaigns that reshaped Europe in 1815. Posterity preserved the legacy of the imperial era. John Quincy Adams, the sixth President of the United States, poses for a daguerreotype in 1843, years after his term ended in 1829. Known for his work as a diplomat and committed abolitionist, he was the first holder of the office to be photographed. His political path helped shape American foreign relations. Sitting behind the wheel of a car in front of Beverly Motor Company, actress Hedy Lamarr personifies Hollywood glamour in the 1930s. The Pontiac sign in the background reinforces consumer culture and the rise of the auto industry in California, linking celebrity image to the modern lifestyle. Joseph Ratzinger in 1965 witnessed the close of the Second Vatican Council, a key period in the modernization of the Catholic Church. As a young theologian and professor, his academic work in Germany influenced doctrinal debates that shaped his clerical path all the way to the papacy decades later. Positioned vertically at the Milan Triennale, the Citroën DS19 represents the height of automotive design and visual innovation in 1957. The display highlights the aerodynamic lines of the French model, which broke with the visual standards of the time and directly influenced the future of European industrial engineering. Two young Estonian women showed off punk style in 1980 as a form of expression and cultural resistance under the Soviet regime. Their look, filled with leather jackets and big hairstyles, symbolized the search for individual freedom and political dissent. This youth movement foreshadowed the social changes that would lead to national independence. Indigenous leaders set up camp on the Great Plains in 1890, a time marked by reservation confinement and the decline of nomadic life. The teepee structure shows traditional paintings, while riders and families organize themselves in a territory undergoing intense political change. Operating a telephone switchboard at the Many Glacier Hotel on June 26, 1925, the indigenous woman Helen reflects technological integration in remote parts of Montana. Her use of traditional clothing while working highlights the coexistence of cultural identity and modern communication systems. The Dunkley Premotor appeared in 1923 as a motorized baby carriage that allowed nannies and mothers to get around the city with less physical effort. The vehicle had a rear platform for the operator, reflecting the search for convenience and the application of technology to urban mobility after the war. A technician worked on the complex wiring of an IBM computer in 1948 under the watchful eye of photographer Berenice Abbott. The image highlights the essential role of women in maintaining data processing technology after the war. This manual technical work was crucial to the operation of the first large computer systems. Recycling campaigns in London during 1943 were essential to ease the shortage of raw materials in the British war industry. Civilian efforts to collect newspapers, cans, and glass reduced the effects of severe rationing, turning daily home life into a logistical support front. Young Californians gathered on a public stairway in 1960 reflect the cultural diversity and search for introspection at the start of that decade. While one young man practices yoga, others read or rest, showing the atmosphere of social change. These behaviors foreshadowed the rise of the counterculture in the United States. The winner of a beauty contest in New York in 1922 embodied the style transition of that decade. Her long, natural hair still reflected older standards before the flapper look would dominate the following years. This kind of competition was gaining strength as mass entertainment in post-war America. Traditional clothing shaped childhood on the island of Marken, where boys wore baggy pants and wooden clogs known as klompen. Geographic isolation preserved unique customs until the early 20th century, reflecting a resilient fishing society that adapted clothing to the harsh local climate. The need for labor during World War I opened the way for women to take jobs in postal services that had previously been limited to men. The use of adapted uniforms symbolized the social transition of the 1910s, establishing new roles for women that would remain after the war. Workers of the Scott and Graff Lumber Company gather for a group meal in Minnesota in 1913. The exhausting routine of lumber workers demanded a heavy, high-calorie diet served in large wooden dining halls that acted as the social center of these isolated camps in the northern United States. An American farming family shared dinner in 1940 under the light of an oil lamp. The simple interior of the wooden home reflects rural living conditions during the final period of the Great Depression. This austere daily life was common in the farming areas that supported the country's production. Walls built from reused metal sheets and 7-Up advertising signs shelter the family of a Great War veteran in Corpus Christi. Russell Lee recorded this fragile home on Nueces Bay during the Great Depression, revealing the hardships faced by former soldiers in Texas. Women wearing corsets and elaborate hats play cards in a dry landscape during the 1890s, revealing the contrast between European fashion and expeditions through harsh terrain. The scene shows the persistence of rigid social customs even in difficult weather conditions and geographic isolation. A Victorian family poses for a rare photograph in the 1890s with expressions that challenge the usual stiffness of the time. Their formal clothing and studio setting reflect the rise of family photography as a symbol of social status and emotional memory among households at the end of the century. A young woman bathes her feet in a stream surrounded by dense vegetation in 1890, revealing a rare moment of relaxation and direct contact with nature. The composition captures the simplicity of rural life and the search for refuge in the natural landscape before the rapid urbanization of the next century. The imposing New York Stock Exchange building at 18 Broad Street highlights the neoclassical facade that had opened only a few years earlier. The economic growth of the United States was establishing Wall Street as the global financial center, while the market searched for stability after the banking panic of 1907. Pedestrians and horse-drawn vehicles filled the wide sidewalks of West 23rd Street in New York around 1905. The constant movement in front of the imposing commercial storefronts reflects the economic energy of Manhattan, establishing the street as a central point of American urban life. Heavy traffic of horse-drawn vehicles and double-decker buses fills the King's Cross area in London on July 20, 1899. Signs pointing to the Great Northern Railway Station guide pedestrians through the urban bustle, establishing the place as one of the main transportation hubs of the British capital. Andrew Jackson strengthened the democratic movement while serving as president between 1829 and 1837. The former general and lawyer had already exercised strong political influence before entering the White House. His military and legal background laid the foundation for an administration marked by deep changes in the federal union. A human chess match takes place in Palace Square in St. Petersburg in 1924. Soldiers and horses replace the traditional pieces on the giant board drawn on Russian ground. The event turned military strategy into a public spectacle to celebrate the new social order that had been established. A line of young women dressed in formal white gowns marks a graduation ceremony in the late 1890s, showing the social importance of rites of passage at the time. The sophistication of the dresses with lace and bows reflects etiquette standards and the academic prestige sought by elite families. The ruins of the Temple of Bacchus in Baalbek appear in a photograph taken sometime between the 1870s and 1880s in Lebanon. The preserved Roman structure reveals the architectural grandeur of the ancient world and the archaeological fascination that drove historical documentation expeditions in the Middle East. A woman rides a tricycle with uneven wheels under the lens of Charles W. Oldreive in 1882. The model reflects the technical transition of the Victorian era before modern bicycles became popular. This type of vehicle symbolized growing mobility and independence in the rural daily life of Western society. During horse races in France in the 1910s, the style known as la mode aux courses reveals the sophistication of Belle Époque women's fashion. Decorated hats and detailed lace made up social clothing, serving as symbols of distinction and elegance in Paris high society. A gigantic cardon cactus dominates the dry landscape of Baja California in 1895, showing the monumental scale of native Mexican plant life. The human figure at the base of the plant serves as a measure of the region's botanical magnitude, documenting desert biodiversity during a period of scientific and geographic exploration. Clown Charlie Smith and other circus performers visit a children's hospital around 1930. The effort aimed to bring entertainment to young patients, showing charitable practices and the social role of traveling companies in the world of hospital care.